We're very honored today at 1590 WCGO to have aboard a conservative member of MEP for the southeast of England. He's been so since 1999. He is Secretary General of the Alliance of European Conservatives and Reformists. He's a polymath and a polylinguist. He speaks French and Spanish beautifully. He loves Europe, and he is somewhat of a contrarian in as much as he believes the European Union is making its member countries poorer and less democratic and less free. He is here to discuss these complicated subjects with us in a way that we can really understand. The Eurozone is a weird thing, and I'll tell you, Mr. Hannan, my joke, if you wish, about the Eurozone, which I love. My Italian friend told me this joke. But I want first to welcome you to WCGO here in Chicago, and thank you. We realize how valuable your time is. Thank you for sharing your views and thoughts with us here.
Thank you, Franklin. Okay, let's hear the joke.
Okay, so the joke is, because I was baffled by the Eurozone. So the joke helped me understand how this applies. So let's see. Mario Recanatini and Nikos Lukomatis are old friends. They went to L'Aiglon School in Switzerland together, say. And as they grow, they sort of stay in touch. They become family men, and each becomes the mayor of a small town. Nicolo Lukomatis becomes the mayor of a small town in Greece, of course, and Matteo Recanatini becomes the mayor of a small Italian town. And finally, they decide they haven't seen each other in so long. And Matteo calls Nico and says, Nico, come to Italy, visit my family, see my mayoral house, and let's hang out and drink some good wine. So Nico says, sure, so they visit. When Nico gets there, he sees a house he's never seen before. I mean, this is a small town. He says, Matteo, I mean, your house, you have a 5-car garage, a swimming pool, servants, this is an amazing house. How can you afford this mansion as mayor of the town on this budget? And Matteo looks at Nico and says, Nico, my friend, you see that bridge? And he points out to the water. Nico looks, he says, Nico, that bridge was supposed to be a 2-lane bridge when the Eurozone money came through. But I put a stoplight on either end, and I made it a 1-lane bridge. And with the money I saved, I built this beautiful mansion. Nico says, aha, Matteo, you're still so smart. Then a few months later, or maybe a year later, Nico invites Matteo to his little Greek house. He comes with the family, the wife and kids. And when he sees this house, I mean, this is a tiny little Greek town on an island. There's no tax money here. A beautiful big mansion. And Matteo says, Nico, how did you do this? Look, this marble statuary and fountains and terraced lawns and a French parterre. How did you do it? And Nico says, well, Matteo, when the Eurozone money came through, you see that bridge? And Matteo looks out on the water, and he doesn't see no bridge. And Nico says, So tell us a wider view, if you can. That joke went on a little longer than it should have, but have you heard that one? Probably.
I mean, you in a way, that's the problem. There comes a point when the money runs out because, and actually it isn't just a joke. I mean, there was a wonderful thing some years ago where they did an aerial survey of agrarian land in Italy, and they discovered that if every available square inch had been given over solely to the cultivation of olives, there still wouldn't be enough olives in Italy to justify the subsidy for the amount of olive oil being claimed from the Brussels budget. So there's a reason why people tell these jokes. They came from somewhere, but there was bound to come a point when the money ran out, and we've reached that point now. And the sad thing is that people follow incentives. If the kitchen is dirty enough, you get the bacteria. And if the best way to get rich is by arranging your affairs in order to qualify for handouts from the EU, that's what the smart people do. And that, I'm afraid, has been happening, in Greece particularly, since the mid-1980s. The best, brightest kids in every cohort, instead of making things or selling things, became directly or indirectly rent seekers from Brussels, either bureaucrats or contractors or consultants or whatever. All the best talent was taken out of the country, and we can see what's happened. No country has received higher per capita subsidies in the EU than Greece has, and look where it got them.
And the remarkable thing is it has not been good for Greece. This was explained to me by my bowman on a race across the Mediterranean two years ago. And I was trying to understand the relationship between the euro and the Eurozone and currency changes from my very limited point of view and not having traveled a great deal. And he said, Franklin, imagine a Greek fisherman who's done the same thing as his father did, and his father before him, and his father before him, just making enough money. You can go to the olive tree and eat some olives. Your friend makes the wine. You have barter deals with people all over town. And every day or every couple of days, you bring in a few fish from the Mediterranean, whose stocks, by the way, are rapidly collapsing. And then all of a sudden, some politicians in Brussels tell you that, you of limited means and education are now responsible for some sort of transnational agreement. And your currency and your ways of life are linked with those of Brussels and other places you've never been and never want to or hope to go. He explained it to me this way, and it kind of made sense, but it made me ask additional questions. Is that correct? Is that a good way of looking at it from a sort of a microcosmic point of view?
Definitely you have to sympathize with the people who have been protesting in the stricken Mediterranean countries. I mean, absolutely true. They didn't cause the crisis. They didn't borrow the money, but they are being expected to repay it. Low and medium income people have seen their taxes go up and have seen their income go down in order to pay off some very wealthy bankers and bondholders from outside. So you can totally understand the anger. I mean, the solution is not to do what the current Greek government wants, which is just to increase spending even more and, hike the minimum wage by 50% and increase pensions and give free electricity to 300,000 households and so on, and expect the rest of the world to write off the debt while they're doing all this. I mean, that is a kind of fantasy, but in a way, you understand why they've reached that fantasy. The system has convinced them that the old corporatist pro-EU parties are the real lunatics, are the real extremists, and that they're prepared to try almost anything else as an alternative. What I think is really the root cause of the problem here, Franklin, is that plainly the euro has failed. I mean, if you define success in economic terms, has it made its constituent nations wealthier or poorer? There is no question, right? The euro has inflicted unmitigated ruin on Greece. There has been a worse recession in Greece than the Great Depression. Right? The downturn has fallen more over the last 6 years than it did between 1929 and 1935. Half of all young Greeks are unemployed. A quarter of the entire population is unemployed. GDP is down an incredible 27% from peak. So you can't really make the argument that the euro has been other than catastrophic. But these guys in Brussels just won't admit their mistake. They are so committed to the political unification of Europe that they are prepared to pay any price in order to keep it going. Actually, I said pay any price there, Franklin. I should have said inflict any price, because, of course, it's not the Eurocrats who are paying. They have their guaranteed incomes. They don't pay tax. They're cosseted. They're looked after. But the price that they are inflicting on working people across the Mediterranean in terms of poverty, unemployment, emigration is awesome. And you see the real cruelty of the project now laid bare.
We by the way, our guest, ladies and gentlemen, is Daniel Hannan, a British politician, journalist, author, member of the European Parliament. Very honored to have him here. You said something earlier, sir, that really piqued my interest. You suggested, and I cannot say verbatim, but you suggested that the problems with the subsidies and the handouts had led otherwise productive business owners, for instance, entrepreneurs, away from the path of productivity and growing local and national economies, and toward the path of getting into this clever carny business of, building bridges to nowhere, as we say here.
Absolutely right.
We here at WCGO, we're focused like a laser on small business, and this is an issue that is of extraordinary concern to the people of Illinois and Chicago in particular, as we have a Republican governor extraordinarily who is focused on growing small business. About whom I've heard great things, by the way, yeah. If you look at business itself in Europe, how has business suffered from, in a few specific models or maybe if you just take a sector or two from the Eurozone, things we can take to the bank and try to understand this enormously complex thing, the euro?
Well, the system in a way is a racket that services the needs of the very large corporations that can afford big lobbyists and a big presence in Brussels, and not the needs of their smaller competitors. And this isn't even just the euro, this is the whole EU project. I mean, to pluck an example more or less at random, there were a lot of small herbalists and dealers in alternative medicine and higher dose vitamin and mineral supplements and so on who found that they were subjected to a regulatory regime by the EU that put a lot of them out of business. They couldn't afford the compliance costs. Now, this was... You can take the view that alternative medicine is a harmless placebo, or you can take the view that it's good for you, right? But it's plainly not poisonous, right? Killing your customers is a bad business model in the long run, and there was no evidence that there was any deleterious health impact. So why did the EU set out to criminalize an activity that was being harmlessly pursued by millions of people? Who was behind it? Well, you can probably guess, right? There was the big pharmaceutical corporations who spotted the opportunity to disable a smaller competitor and put their rivals out of business. And what happened in that sector has happened right across the board. You get these standards that we're told that it's for environmental protection or social standards or something. Almost always, it's actually because one particular manufacturer or a cartel of manufacturers happens to meet a certain set of specifications anyway, and they see this as a tremendous opportunity to export their costs. And, when we're looking at probably having a referendum on whether we should stay in the EU, in the UK, and I can tell you now how it's going to line up. The small entrepreneurs who have all these compliance costs, who have the taxes and the regulations thrown at them, who are never thanked, who put up with it day after day and keep paying the politicians' bills, I'm pretty certain that they will vote to leave the European Union and re-embrace the world economy. But the big corporates, the Goldman Sachs, the Unilevers, and I guarantee you that they will be funding the campaign to stay in because they have invested so much in Brussels to get rules that suit them. The last thing they want to do is to have to start all over again with a new set of regulators.
Yes, I'm reminded of a story I heard whereby the heterogeneity of the cheese markets has been completely devastated by labeling and shipping mandates that have put independent producers, for which Europe is famous, out of business, plainly out of business, no longer able to export their cheese to various places.
Cheese was a particular disaster. But, a similar thing, abattoirs, the same thing happened, art dealers, all these huge numbers of, and now it's financial services, the small, the huge banks are setting rules that are pushing the little funds out of business at every level. Do you know what? I mean, it was interesting what you were saying about speaking to and for the entrepreneurs in Illinois. My political party, the Conservative Party, brought out a poster the other day, and it's the best poster I can remember seeing from a political party. It didn't say vote Conservative. It didn't mention anything. It just said, if you had a go and started a small business, thank you. And I thought, yep, politicians should say that every day. We should never forget who it is who's paying our salaries.
Paying the bills. Thank you, Daniel Hannan. I want to just remind people who you are. British politician, member of the European Parliament, representing Southeast England for the Conservative Party, also Secretary General of the Alliance of European Conservatives and Reformists. What a very enlightening interview, and I really appreciate your taking time out of your busy day, Mr. Hannan, to join us here at WCGO 1590. This is Chicago's New Talk, WCGO 1590.